The dark side of manifestation. The need to manifest everything might be another form of fear. And that sounds strange, because manifestation is usually presented as freedom. Think about what you want. Visualize it. Believe it. Feel it. Act as if it's already yours. And eventually, reality will catch up. But what if sometimes the desire to control reality is actually the thing keeping you from feeling free? What if the sentence, "I need this to happen," is hiding something much deeper? Not desire, not ambition, fear. Because look closely at the way we sometimes manifest. I need this relationship. I need this amount of money. I need to move to that city. I need this person to love me. I need my career to work. I need my life to look like this. And underneath all of it is often one quiet condition. And only then will I finally be okay. That's where manifestation becomes something completely different. Because now you're not simply creating a life. You're trying to make reality give you permission to feel whole. And that changes everything. Imagine someone sitting alone at night. They've been thinking about a particular person all day. They imagine the relationship. They imagine the messages, the dates, the future. The moment that person finally says, "I choose you," and they tell themselves, "I am manifesting love." But underneath the visualization is something else. Please let this happen. Please don't let me be alone. Please let this person choose me. Please give me the life I imagined. And every time reality doesn't match the image, they become anxious. They check their phone. They interpret every message. They look for signs. They search for coincidences. They wonder whether they're doing manifestation correctly. They visualize harder. They affirm more. They try to control their emotions. And suddenly, the thing that was supposed to make them free has become another source of anxiety. That's the paradox. You can become obsessed with manifesting the life you want because you are afraid of the life you currently have. And maybe you've experienced a version of this yourself. You tell yourself, "When I get the job, I'll relax. When I get the money, I'll be happy. When I find the right person, I'll feel complete. When I become attractive enough, I'll finally feel confident. When I move somewhere else, everything will change. When I become successful, I'll finally feel like I matter." So you chase, and chase, and chase. But notice what happens. The future becomes your emotional home. You're physically here, but psychologically you're living somewhere else. You're constantly negotiating with a future version of reality. And your present moment becomes something you tolerate until your real life begins. But here's the uncomfortable question. What if the future arrives and you bring the same mind with you? You get the money, and now you're afraid of losing it. You get the relationship. Now you're afraid they'll leave. You get the job. Now you're afraid you'll fail. You become attractive. Now you're afraid of getting older. You become successful. Now you're afraid of becoming unsuccessful. You finally reach the thing you thought would give you peace. And suddenly you discover that peace wasn't included in the package. Because the external thing was never the actual problem. The mind simply moved the finish line. And this is one of the strangest things about human desire. We think, "I want this because it will make me happy." But often what we actually want is the emotional state we imagine will come with it. We don't necessarily want the money. We want security. We don't necessarily want the relationship. We want connection. We don't necessarily want status. We want significance. We don't necessarily want success. We want to feel that our existence matters. The object becomes a symbol, and then we spend years chasing the symbol, while ignoring the state we're actually longing for. There is nothing wrong with wanting things. That's important. This isn't an argument against ambition. Want money, build a business, get stronger, fall in love, travel, create, study, become excellent at something. Build the life you genuinely want. There is absolutely nothing wrong with that. The problem begins when your peace becomes conditional. When your inner statement becomes, I can only be okay if reality gives me what I want. Because now you've handed your peace over to circumstances. And circumstances are unstable. They always have been. They always will be. People change. Markets change. Bodies change. Jobs change. Relationships change. Plans fail. Opportunities disappear. Unexpected things happen. You can influence life. You can prepare. You can make intelligent decisions. But you cannot completely command reality. And the more desperately you try, the more fragile your peace becomes. Think about holding a glass of water. If you're holding it casually, it's easy. But imagine someone tells you, you must not spill a single drop. Suddenly your hand becomes tense. You grip harder. Your muscles tighten. Your attention becomes obsessive. The very desire to maintain perfect control makes the task harder. Life can become like that. You become so obsessed with making everything happen correctly that you stop actually living. You analyze every conversation, every decision, every opportunity, every sign, every setback. You ask, was that a sign? Did I ruin my manifestation? Am I in the wrong vibration? Why isn't it happening? What am I doing wrong? And underneath all those questions is often one assumption. Reality must behave the way I need it to. But life doesn't make that promise. There's another problem. Manifestation can sometimes create a subtle form of self-blame. If everything is supposedly created by your thoughts, what happens when something terrible happens? You may start thinking, did I attract this? Was my vibration wrong? Did I think negatively? Did I manifest this situation? And now you're carrying not only the pain of what happened, but the belief that you somehow created it through the wrong state of consciousness. That's not freedom. That's another prison. You don't control every event that happens in your life. You don't control other people's decisions. You don't control accidents. You don't control the economy. You don't control illness. You don't control time. You don't control death. You don't control the entire universe through the quality of your thoughts. And admitting that isn't weakness. It can actually be incredibly liberating. Because once you stop demanding total control, you can start focusing on something you actually have influence over. How you meet what happens. Imagine two people losing the same opportunity. One says, this shouldn't have happened. My life is ruined. Everything is going wrong. The other says, this hurts. I didn't want this. But what can I do now? Same event, different relationship with reality. The second person isn't magically positive. They're not pretending everything is perfect. They're simply not adding an unnecessary battle on top of the event. And that's a powerful distinction. Pain is one thing. Resistance is another. You can experience disappointment without turning it into, my entire life is wrong. You can experience rejection without turning it into, I'm unlovable. You can experience failure without turning it into, I'm a failure. You can lose something without deciding, I can never be okay again. The event happens. Then the mind creates a story about the event. And often, the story hurts more than the event itself. This is where surrender becomes interesting. Surrender doesn't mean, I'm giving up. It doesn't mean, I don't want anything. It doesn't mean, I'll sit around and let life happen to me. That's not surrender. That's resignation. Real surrender is much more subtle. It means, I will participate fully in life without demanding that life guarantee my desired outcome. You can want something deeply while remaining open to reality. You can work incredibly hard without making the result your identity. You can love someone without demanding that they complete you. You can pursue wealth without believing money will finally make you whole. You can dream about the future without abandoning the present. That's a very different way of living. Imagine you're planting a tree. You choose the soil. You plant the seed. You water it. You protect it. You give it sunlight. You do everything reasonably within your control. But you don't stand beside the seed screaming, "Grow faster." You don't dig it up every morning to check whether the roots are developing. You don't spend the entire day worrying about whether the tree has received enough sunlight. You do your part and allow nature to do its part. That's how desire can work too. Action without obsession. You do what you can. Then you release the demand that reality must immediately reward you. And this changes manifestation completely. Instead of, "I need this to happen," you begin with, "I would love for this to happen." Instead of, "I need this person," you say, "I deeply value this connection, but I don't need another human being to complete my existence." Instead of, "I need to become successful before I can respect myself," you say, "I want to become excellent, but my worth doesn't begin at the finish line." Instead of, "My life must look like this," you say, "This is the direction I'm moving in. I'm open to discovering what happens along the way." That tiny shift, from need to desire, from control to participation, can completely change your relationship with life. And here's something even deeper. Maybe the goal isn't to manifest a specific life. Maybe the deeper goal is to become the kind of person who can meet many different versions of life with clarity. Because imagine having everything you wanted, but being terrified of losing it. And then imagine having less than you wanted, but being deeply present. Which person is actually free? The first person may have more, but the second person may suffer less from the constant demand that reality must remain exactly as they prefer. This doesn't mean you shouldn't improve your circumstances. Improve them, but don't confuse improving your circumstances with finally earning permission to exist peacefully. Because if you do, there will always be another condition, another achievement, another person, another number, another milestone, another version of yourself, another manifestation, and the finish line will keep moving. Look at how this works in ordinary life. You think, if I get 10,000 followers, I'll be satisfied. You get 10,000. Now you want 50,000, then 100,000. Then you compare yourself with someone who has 1,000,000. Suddenly your achievement feels small. The same thing happens with money, relationships, appearance, career, education, everything. The mind adapts. What once looked extraordinary eventually becomes normal. And then it wants something else. This doesn't mean desire is bad. It means desire cannot permanently solve the psychological feeling of incompleteness. Because the feeling of incompleteness isn't always caused by lacking the object. Sometimes, the feeling creates the desire for the object. Read that again. Sometimes you don't feel incomplete because you don't have the thing. You desperately want the thing because you already feel incomplete. And if that's true, getting the thing may temporarily distract you from the feeling, but it may not resolve it. That's why someone can be surrounded by people and still feel lonely. Someone can have money and still feel insecure. Someone can be admired and still feel worthless. Someone can achieve everything they once dreamed about and still wake up asking, "Is this it?" Because external achievement can change your circumstances, cannot automatically change your relationship with yourself. So what do you do? First, know what you actually want, not what social media told you to want, not what your parents wanted, not what your friends are doing, not what would make other people impressed. Ask, if nobody could see my life, what would I actually want? That's a powerful question, because sometimes we're not pursuing a life. We're pursuing an image of a life. Second, separate desire from desperation. Want something? Go after it. But notice what happens internally when you imagine not getting it. Does your entire sense of safety collapse? Does your mind say, "Then I'll never be happy"? That's where the work begins. Not in forcing yourself to stop wanting, but in discovering why the outcome has become responsible for your peace. Third, build a life that is meaningful before the manifestation arrives. Don't postpone living. If you're single, don't spend every day waiting for your relationship to begin. If you're broke, don't postpone every moment of joy until you're wealthy. If you're working toward a career, don't treat your current life as merely a waiting room. Build friendships. Go outside. Learn something. Exercise. Create. Laugh. Read. Make memories. Experience the ordinary. Because otherwise, you can spend 5 years manifesting your dream life while completely missing the life you were actually living. And finally, learn to say, I want this, but I don't need reality to obey me. That sentence contains enormous freedom. I want this relationship, but I don't need this specific person to validate my existence. I want this career, but I don't need one particular outcome to prove that I'm worthy. I want financial freedom, but I don't need to hate my present life until I reach it. I want my dreams, but I don't need the universe to guarantee them. That isn't giving up. That's maturity. That's desire without bondage. Maybe the highest form of manifestation isn't controlling what appears. Maybe it's becoming so inwardly free that what appears no longer determines whether you are okay. You can still build, still desire, still dream, still visualize, still work, still take risks, still pursue extraordinary things. But there's something different underneath it. You're no longer saying, give me this, and then I'll finally be whole. You're saying, I am already here. I am already alive. And from this place, I want to create. That's a completely different energy. You're no longer negotiating with life from fear. You're participating in life from freedom. And perhaps, that is where manifestation becomes something beautiful again. Not a desperate attempt to force reality into giving you the life you think you need, but the natural expression of someone who is already alive, already present, already enough, and therefore free to create without fear. Because maybe the greatest thing you can manifest isn't the perfect relationship. It isn't the perfect body. It isn't the perfect career. It isn't the perfect bank balance. It isn't even the perfect life. Maybe it's the ability to remain whole while life is still becoming what it is going to become. And once you have that, you can want almost anything without being owned by the wanting. You can pursue almost anything without making the outcome responsible for your peace. You can build an extraordinary life without needing life to prove that you're worthy of it. Perhaps surrender isn't the opposite of manifestation. Perhaps surrender is what remains when manifestation is no longer driven by fear.